there, YouTube. Corncob Piper coming at you. It is Saturday afternoon. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. Getting ready to go watch my son's flag football game, and then coming back and I'm going to watch my Buckeyes beat up on University of Iowa. Today's video is not going to be a traditional pipe smoking video per se. Actually, there's going to be no pipe smoking in it. At least maybe some behind the scenes. But I wanted to do a video that I thought maybe some of you might find some interest in. Obviously, if you're not interested, move along to the next one. My feelings won't be hurt, but I wanted to share some of the process of booze making, basically. So every year around this time, I make a liquor for my friends and family. I give it away to them, and this year I've decided to do an apple rye. And I figured I would share some of the initial steps with you, at least the parts that I can legally show you. At least that way you know what to do, at least to get started if you're interested in moving forward with this hobby. So basically today I'm making the wash for the apple brandy. So in essence I'll be making an apple wine. And then in theory, if one hypothetically wanted to take the apple wine and run it through a still, it would come out as apple brandy. And then the next, I'll do a video down the road in about a week, because the process that I'm doing here is going to take me about 10 days. And then the second half will take 10 days, and then to mix them together will take another day. So 10 days or so down the road, I'm going to show you how to make a rye mash or a rye beer. And if one hypothetically wanted to run that fermented rye beer through a still, he would end up with rye whiskey. And then another hypothetical situation, if you wanted to mix the two together, you would end up with apple rye liquor. So I'm just going to run you through the process of making a mash. This is going to be a thin mash or a wash. Goes by many different names, but definitely a thin mash because there are no grains going into this whatsoever. It's just going to be some liquids, some sugar, and some yeast. And let me go ahead and move the camera around a couple of times and I'll show you how to put everything together. Okay, so the first step that you ever want to do when making a wash is get your water going. I have just under 5 gallons in this pot here. And this is going to take a good hour to an hour and a half to come up to heat. You're looking at probably closer to 3 hours if you want to bring 5 gallons of water to a boil. You don't have to bring this to a boil. We just have to heat it up enough to dissolve the sugar. And I always keep a lid on it as well. Helps it heat up a little faster. And it also keeps the water from evaporating. It keeps the condensation in there. So this here, believe it or not, is going to be our mixing vessel, and this is a Brute garbage can. If you're using a garbage can to mix wine or beer in or mash, you need to make sure that it comes from Brute, and it's the gray one, because this is made from food grade polymer, plastic. So I know this is safe to use. If you were doing a large batch, you could actually just ferment in this garbage can, put the lid on. It allows all the carbon dioxide that's coming off of the yeast eating the sugar to escape. But I'm only doing 10 gallons here, so I am going to end up moving this into 2 5-gallon like Culligan water jugs, and I'll show you that step here in a little while. I cannot stress enough that you need to have everything you're using very, very well sterilized. This garbage can has been sterilized. The lid has been sterilized. All my stirring equipment has been sterilized. I sterilized that pot of water before I heated it up. The container that my sugar is in. So everything has to be very, very clean, because the process you're using to ferment stuff into alcohol is very, very conducive to the growth of bacteria as well. So if everything is not properly clean and sterilized, you can ruin the ferment, and you know, this stuff is not cheap, and you'd end up having to start over again. So once again, can't stress enough, make sure everything's sterilized. I'm not going to go through the sterilization process. Super easy to find. Just Google it on the internet, how to sterilize brewing equipment, and they'll show you the whole process. So I just went really quickly and grabbed one of these 5-gallon jugs. Basically that is what we are going to ferment in, and we'll use a one-way valve stopper on top to basically keep air out, but allow the carbon dioxide to escape, and I'll show you that here quickly. So here I have my 6 pounds of sugar. These are the stopper valves that we're going to be putting on top of the 5-gallon containers. You could buy these online fairly cheap. You got to make sure that, and I use plastic for fermenting. If you're fermenting in a glass carboy, this will take a smaller size bung. But for these ones, you have to make sure that you're getting the correct size bung for the 5-gallon plastic water containers. And I believe it is a number 10. And then you can get these one-way stopper valves. They cost just a couple of bucks. You get them on Amazon or wherever. Okay, so what we're going to do now is pitch some yeast. Ideally, you want 90-degree water. Use a thermometer if this is your first time. I can do it by feel. So basically, we're going to do 1 tablespoon. So basically, for each 5 gallons, you want to do 1 tablespoon of yeast. I am using Red Star Daddy distiller's yeast. You can pick this up online as well. Just use a couple glass containers to pitch the yeast, and this is basically just getting the yeast moving and making sure that your yeast is still good as well. To the 1 tablespoon of yeast, you're going to want to add a tablespoon of sugar. Just mix them up a little bit. Go. So 90 degrees is the magic number you're looking for the correct temperature to pitch yeast at. So I got some warm water here, hot water, mixing it with some distilled water, room temperature. This should feel almost like baby bottle warm. That's a little bit too hot, so I'm going to go ahead and add maybe another 2 ounces here just to bring the temperature correct to each one. And then in goes the 8 ounces of water. There we go. Yeast is pitched, and we'll come back in a little while and that should be all foamy and frothy, and that's how you know that your yeast is working correctly. Okay, so this is really where the fun begins, the mixing process of the mash. So into our mixing container, we are going to go in with 6 pounds of sugar. Now, if this was a grain bill, you would bring that number up to 5 pounds per 5 gallons of liquid. So it'd be 5 gallons or 5 pounds of corn, 5 pounds of sugar, 5 pounds of or 5 gallons of water. So 5-5-5 ratio is the best one to stick through. Because there's so much sugar in the juices that I'm going to be putting in here, I only need to add 3 pounds of sugar per 5 gallons of water. Like I said, we're doing a 10-gallon mash here, so I went with 6 pounds of sugar. So next goes in the water. This is 5 gallons of hot water. Does not have to be boiling. This is to dissolve the sugar. And that goes in the whole bunch. So once we have the water in, I'm using basically, this is like a big, huge, like jambalaya stirrer. I ordered this online. It's kind of like a canoe paddle. This has been sterilized as well. This just makes the stirring process very, very easy for me. It's nice and tall. I don't have to bend over. So we're just going to go ahead now and make sure that all that sugar is dissolved within the 5 gallons of warm water. And this shouldn't take too long to get this dissolved. Sorry about all the steam. If it's steaming up the lens there, I can't really see. Okay, so that is done. I'm going to go ahead and leave that in there so it stays sterilized. And next up, we are going to go in with 5 gallons of apple cider. Just picked this up at Walmart. It's some pretty good stuff. I drank it. Always make sure you drink it and make sure it's something you're wanting to drink before you use it. That way you know you'll have a good final product. So basically, this is going to help cool that water down now so our yeast can work. Like I said, we're going to go in here with 5 gallons of this stuff. I'm not going to make you guys watch me dump 5 gallons in here, so once I get these dumped, we'll be back again. Okay, so all 5 gallons of the apple cider have been poured into the container. Now I tried this the first time when I made apple brandy, and I used all apple cider, and then I made some at a later date, and I used half apple cider and half apple juice, and it came out with a cleaner, crisper taste for me. So I prefer to do the half and half process. However, feel free to use all apple cider if you want. However, half of it is going to need to be heated up so you can get that sugar dissolved. So I used the 5 gallons of water. Now we are going to add 5 of these containers of the apple juice. Basically, each one makes a gallon of juice. And we're going to go ahead now and dump all 5 of these guys in as well. Once again, I'm not going to make you watch all that. All right there, so all 5 of the containers of apple juice have now been poured in. What I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to aerate it. I'm going to push air into the mixture. That helps the yeast. The yeast needs oxygen to ferment. And by pushing air into here, it starts the fermentation process and it makes it go a lot better. So you can see I'm forming air bubbles there, hopefully, through the lens on the top of the mash. The yeast is pitched. I just went and checked it. I'll show you what that looks like, and you also want to take a listen to your jar or cup of yeast too, just to make sure that it is working correctly. I'm going to go ahead and check my temperature of this. It's got to be 90 degrees. That feels perfect. I'm going to go ahead and take my spoon out now. I'm going to go get the yeast. I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so there is the yeast. You can see it has pitched correctly. It's got that foam forming on the top. That's the yeast expanding and going to work. You probably can't hear it through the camera, but if you also take a listen, you put this up to your ear, you'll hear the carbon dioxide being released too. So that's going to go right into our container. As well as the second one is going to go in also. And then at this point we just give it one final mix. Push a little bit more air once again. Lid goes on. We're going to let that yeast go to work, and we're going to come back to this in about an hour and transfer it to the other containers. Okay, so it's been about an hour. We went to an hour and a half. We went to my son's football game, which they won, which was awesome. I don't know if you could see that, but the yeast is working. You can see, I guess it's probably pretty too dark, but I can see the bubbles forming on the top. What I've gone ahead and done is got the 5-gallon jugs. I've added a teaspoon of yeast into both of them. Just something that I like to do, and then I've repurposed the cider jugs as funnels. And basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get that pitcher that I had the sugar in, and I am going to start dumping pitchers full into each one. You do want to make sure that you're going back and forth as you're dumping, so back and forth from each one as you're dumping the pitchers. That way the yeast is evenly distributed in both containers. So I've made sure also, as you can see underneath, to put plenty of towels down in between the garbage can and the 5-gallon jugs, just so I don't get any dripping on the floor. Then all I'm going to do is one by one Just go ahead and start dumping these in until they're full. And obviously, once again, I'm not going to make you sit here and watch this whole process. Okay, so now I have all 10 gallons transferred to the two 5-gallon jugs. We are going to go ahead and put on the stoppers with the one-way valve. Basically what you do here is after you put them on, you're going to fill water halfway up one of these little bubbles. So the carbon dioxide that comes down will come, or comes out, will come up through here, transfer through the water, and then bubble up and come out the top, but it will not allow any air to come in. So it's basically a one-way valve. So just go ahead and put these on, and I suggest putting these on once you have them set in place. Otherwise they can burp and you can get some of the wash up inside there. Once again, these have been sterilized. I have, just in a measuring cup, some distilled water. Let me zoom in here so you can get a better view of how I do this. So there we go. So we're just going to dump this through the top. Hopefully you're seeing this well. Basically till both of those valves are about halfway full or thereabout. You want to make sure there is water in both of them. That's about good there. Go ahead and do the same to this other one now. You got that one full. And then it is just a matter of putting the caps on now. And I'll go ahead, and once this starts really, the yeast really starts going at it and it really starts bubbling up, I'll come back and I'll show you actually how these work. So basically that's what this looks like when it starts burping. Obviously it's only been like an hour. It may take the yeast maybe a full 8 hours before it becomes completely active, and you're going to see this is going to start bubbling like that by crazy. This will take anywhere between 4 to 10 days to ferment, depending on what temperature you're fermenting at. I keep my house at about 74, so for mine it's going to take probably anywhere between 7 to 10 days. However, if you were leaving these outside, say in a warm garage and it was in the 80s, this would probably be done fermenting in as quickly as like 3 to 4 days. Once the bubbling that you're seeing there slows down to maybe one burp every 2 minutes, your fermentation will be complete at that point. When I come out here tomorrow morning, this will be bubbling like that probably once every 5 or 10 seconds, and it'll continue to bubble heavily like that for a couple of days. And at that point, it'll start slowing down gradually from there until I get down to that, one gurgle per, say every 2 minutes, and then I'll know that my fermentation at that point is complete. I should end up with anywhere between 8 and 12% ABV, alcohol by volume, for each one of these 5-gallon jugs by the time the fermentation is complete too. I do not use a high gravity yeast. You can get some turbo yeast and stuff like that, which will yield closer to a 20% alcohol by volume once the fermentation has taken place as well. But I feel that the lower ABV, the better overall taste you get from the final product. Okay, everybody, so I hope you enjoyed watching. That's a good solid way to make a mash for some apple brandy. Obviously, there are very, very many other different ways to go about doing this. This is the way that I found to be best and easiest for me. And sorry I can't show you the next process in the making, but it is what it is. If you do have any questions about the further process of this or in the making of the apple brandy mash, definitely feel free to send me a PM, or you could email me at corncobpiping at gmail.com. That's corncob piping, not piper, but corncob piping at gmail.com, or shoot me a PM. I will not be answering any questions in regards to distilling in the comment section below this video, and that's just to keep yourself and myself safe. So if you do have questions on that, definitely feel free to send me that PM or that email. And I don't even know if this video is gonna, garner, enough views to justify me doing a second video on this, actually showing you the rye mash build, which is quite a bit more intensive process. So if I get enough good feedback or whatever from you guys on this video, enough likes or whatever, or interest in it, I'll definitely go ahead and show you the making of a rye whiskey mash as well. But thanks for coming along on this journey with me. I know this isn't per se my normal pipe smoking video, but I thought it was something that many of you out there might be interested in, and I definitely wanted to share it with you. So as always, YouTube, keep on piping.